What's up, guys? This is Kojo. What I'm going to show is basically, it's mostly for myself. It's like a record of things that I've been working on, and just like kind of explaining the process for myself, but maybe this will be of use to somebody else that's watching. But lately I've been working with Unity 4, and I wanted to do a little bit more scripting with JavaScript as opposed to C#, which I've used before. And this entire process goes through, you know, as far as a game object, how to get that game object to move in a 3D space, and also how to get that object to animate. So, as you can see over here, this is a scene. I didn't create this scene. This was from this is a scene from DT mobile development series, and you see this is a model that was still level. You see all the aspects of it. And also here you see the player over here, and with the player has multiple parts. The player is the main player, and basically there's a player, a folder, and everything in there is like a child of it, so it's all part of it. So like there's the main camera, so you click on the main camera, it's actually the camera preview as you would see in the gameplay. And here is a point light, and I think the point light is attached to the gun that the player has. As you can see here, there's the gun, and you see the typical gizmos, the camera gizmo, light gizmo. You can look at it at many different angles, and this is the entire level. And if you play it, if you play this scene in particular, this is what you see, and you see some of the objects are animated. But when you try to press any kind of directional movement, whatever it is, the ASD or the up, down, left, right, nothing happens. So the process was trying to figure out how to get this player object to move. So it first started with a script. So here is from here. So what I created was a movement. First I started with a movement controller script, and you see here, if you click on it, to the right you see, this is actually like the code for the script. But if you want to do any editing, you double click it, go to mono develop, and you see this is the script that I wanted to use for movement. So there are many variables. So you see over here, variable speed, which is just a float, variable jump speed, which is a float, and initially set at 8.0. Gravity set as a float, by default is 20.0, and also have another variable, a private variable, move direction, which is actually taking information from the vector3. So it's a vector3 variable, move direction, and it's set to vector3 0, which means one cool thing with the Unity is that you can actually go straight into the scripting reference. If you do, I think on the Mac, I'm not sure about the PC, if you do, you select the part of the code that you wish to get information about. So I put it over the vector3. You press command and the apostrophe, and it opens the, let me close this out. I think it's faded out. Let's try this again. Command apostrophe, and you see vector3 and vector3 0. This is the one that I use. Vector3 0. That's I don't need to see that stuff. Vector3 0 is shorthand for vector3 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, 0 on the Z axis. And also another thing you need to take into consideration, since this is using JavaScript, by default any variable that you declare is considered public. So let me see. So you remember these variables: speed, jump, gravity. Let's close it out. If I go back to, let me see. Let me go to the player. Well, first of all, in order for me to use the script, I need to apply this script to the player. So select the player, you select the movement script, and you drop it onto the player, and you see that it's added. So in JavaScript and Unity, any variable that you declare is by default public. So the ones that I declared here, speed, jump speed, gravity, they're editable. You know that you can edit them within the inspector. So if you want to change it while you're playing to 10, that's fine, but it's not going to change it on in the script. So let me just go back to 6. And also if you want a variable to be private, you have to declare it as private. So over here, private variable move direction. So you notice move direction is not even noted in the inspector. So let's say I take the private out, save it, and let's see what happens. Move direction, it should show up. Yeah, so you see now, since I declared it as took out the private, you can edit in the inspector. So you see, it's a vector 3, so the x, y, and z, you can adjust those like this, like that. Put it back to 0 and set it back to private. On the other hand, if you do a C# script, I think by default it is private, and in order for you to have it editable within the inspector, you have to declare it as public explicitly. So let me go back, make this private, and I don't know, I guess it's a habit because of the C#. I don't know, it's probably like, not to get a habit, but I always declare them as public just to keep it straight, because sometimes when you work in Unity, you're going to be working with both JavaScript and C# script. So just to be consistent, I just when I know something, I want something to be editable within the inspector, whether it's JavaScript or C#, I always put public. And for something that I don't want to be editable within the inspector, I always set everything to private. So let me just save that. So in order for the movement, I want something in which it updates every frame. So first thing you see over here is the controller. I set a variable for controller, which takes this information from the character controller. If you want more information, it's a good thing to go command, and you get all the information as far as the variables, the functions, the inherited members, and this is really useful as far as experimenting. Yeah, I watch anime. Let me close that out. And based upon that, it says get component character controller. So basically, it's going to get its information from the character controller, which is actually attached to the player object that we have in Unity. So you go over here, player. It has a character controller. So basically, the script is referencing that character controller. And the next thing you have here is if the controller, which is based, from here, the character controller is grounded, meaning if the character controller is like colliding with the surface, the ground, set up another. This is based on the move direction variable, vector 3 0 0 0. Have the input get the horizontal axis on the X, and I set for the Y-axis set that to 0, and for the Z-axis, input get axis vertical. So basically, yeah, allows for player input. So like now you see like these things, parentheses, the horizontal and the vertical, and you're wondering where those come from. If you go back to Unity, just close that out. Go back to Unity. Go into project settings. Go to input, and you see these axes, and you see one for vertical, which is basically controls like the up and the down, and you see another one for the horizontal, which covers, controls left to right. And you see other ones such as one for fire 1, fire 2, one for jump, just like the positive button is the space button. You see the vertical positive button is the up down button. So they're different. They're different inputs. So if you want to like actually reference these inputs, this is how you reference them by parentheses. So like as you saw over here, all of them are considered axes. So you input get axis. Get more information on that. Get axis, and it's very important to like always reference, go back to the scripting references. Like also you can go through here as well instead. If you want to, you can access the reference manual, uni manual, scripting reference manual through the help. So basically, if the character is grounded, be able to control the input. So if you do left or right, control the horizontal movement. If you do up or down, control the vertical movement. And let me see. This was actually just to control the movement, the transform direction. So go over here. Transforms direction from local space to world space. Yeah. So once you do this, you have to control the player input, control how to move, and also you need to control how fast to move. So you see how I'm referencing. So I have the move direction, and I have it's times equals speed. So you see over here I made a public variable speed, and it's set to 6. So let's say you play the character and the character movement is too slow or too fast. You can actually make adjustments while you're playing in the game view. And within this function, you also need to put something with regards to the jumping movement. So this handles like the left or right, but specifically for the jump movement. So input get button jump. So whenever the button that's attributed to the jump is pressed, which is the space button on the keyboard, this will happen. Move direction y jump speed. So the jump speed is set to 8, which is actually can be adjusted since it's a public variable. And outside of that if statement, you need to be able to, because one problem is before when you try to play this character, nothing was happening. It was because the player was floating in the space. So it wasn't actually touching the ground. So in order for this actual if ground that is grounded, this controller is grounded, to get it to work, you need to apply gravity to the player. So basically it says move direction, so it's applied to the y, negative equals gravity times that delta time, because you don't want the movement to be dictated by per frame. You want it to be dictated by per second. So you set the gravity, which will get the this if statement to work, and this one is basically to get the controller to move. So just actually go here. So everything is explained in the scripting reference. So just having that movement script applied, this is what happens to the player. So let me show you. So you press play, it goes from the scene view to the game view, and you see the movement going left, going right, pressing space to jump, going right. You see all that, yeah. So the camera's moving with the player, and you see like the spotlight, the point light. It's moving as well. Let's go through the entire scene. So that's that's all good, but it looks kind of, there's no movement, there's no animation from the character. So in order to get the character movement, as far as like the animation, another script has to be made. So let me, first before going into the actual script, if you look into the imported asset of the player, let's go to the model. This is the actual model you see here. Look to the lower right, move it around. It's the model. It's the rig. This is model setting, and you see here at the lower level you see animation. So prior to being imported, basically when you have a character and which has different kinds of movements, you import it with all the animations as one, one full animation. So you have like one portion of the animation, whatever, seconds 0 through 2 idle, seconds 3 through 4 moving right, likewise you have every single animation sequentially into one animation, then you import it into Unity. So you see over here there's like there are 6 animations. So element 0 is for the character when he's idle. Animation 2 is when he runs forward. Element 2 is when he runs backwards. So you get the idea. And let me go up here. If you go to animations, you can see like the segments, like you see the clips. These are clips. Idle. I guess is this the frames? Maybe it's the frames. This is the, I guess, frames 1 through 51. It's idle. Frames, if I click here, frames 52 through 72 is the run forward. You get the idea. Strafe right, strafe left, death. Death. So basically it's 218 frames, 24 frames per second. And so once you know that, you can create a script. Go back to scripts. The animation script, and you want this to apply in the update. So basically, per frame. So you set up an if then say if else if statement. So if input get key D or input get key right, this animation will occur. So if you go click animation play, you need this in order to get the animation to get the animation to work. So animation.play, and you notice it uses the term run forward. If you remember, if you go back to I'm trying to go back to the object, the model, each animation had its own term. So you see idle, run forward, run backwards. So you need to reference that in order to get back to that segment of the animation. So we go to mono. So animation play, run forward. You see here, run forward. If that's not happening, else if input get key A or input get key left with like the left direction. Animation play, run backwards. And you go down the list. So either if you want to play the character using the A, W, S keys, and also don't forget, if you forget like the inputs, go back to, let's go here, project settings, input, and you see here horizontal. You can use left, right. The alternate, the left, right keys. The alternate keys you could use are the A or the D keys. The vertical, the main keys are down, up, or the alternate keys are SW. So that's what's being used. So let's go back to model develop. So that's what's being referenced. These axes. So animation play run backwards. Go back to the model so you can see it. And then you just go down the list. Else if W up, input up, animation plays strafe left, strafe right. But if none of these keys are being pressed, no keys are being pressed, you set to animation crossfade idle. And the reason why crossfade is being used is because it kind of, when you like, let's say you're moving forward and then you stop, the animation it becomes a little bit jerky. So let's say you press right and the crossfade happens, like it's a smooth transition between right to idle, or if you go to left and you take your hands off the key, it does a smooth transition to idle instead of like having that jerky movement. So with this script, like you notice how the movement script that I did when I move left, right, jump was placed upon the player in the hierarchy, but you can't place the animation script on the player. You have to place it on the model that actually has the animation, which is the PFB player. So you take the, let me see, animation, and you drop it over the PFB player, and you see it shows up here. And if you press play, yeah, there's no errors. If there were any errors in the script, you would have saw it in the console in red, or if there's a warning, you would have saw it in yellow. You press play. If you press right, it's two things are happening. It's moving right, obviously, but also it's accessing the animation as far as the run forward animation. If I press back, it's going left, and it's accessing the run backwards animation. If I strafe to the right, it moves to the right. The animation is put in place with the right movement, left. The jump is not, it looks silly, but it works. So if you see it, let me just go down the scene. Strafe right, go all the way down, strafe right, get in. So there you have it. So basically it's a combination of the movement and a combination of animation. And one thing that's very, very useful is to actually always go back to the script, go back to the scripting reference and the reference manual to learn about other scripting techniques as far as animation. Whatever you do, if you don't know something, always command apostrophe to figure out how to use particular functions, variables, things of that nature. So as again, this is mostly for me just to keep track of the work that was done in this animation. But if there's any use to any of you that are out there, then that's great. If you have any questions, let me know, and that should be it. All right.